Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about the Moondrop Jew. We'll go through this one kind of quickly. And I think Moondrop hit on something with their DSP versions, and I think they're very interesting. But I think at the same time, there's only so many mid-forward lean sets in the same signature that people are willing to buy and to keep on buying. And not really clear on what they were really shooting for with this one, because I'm not sure it's an improvement over the Chew. Certainly not an improvement over LAN, so it kind of, I don't know. It of course is a USB-C version, DSP version of a set, but does it fill a hole that people were asking for? I'm not too sure about that, but here it is up close. It actually does look quite attractive. The shells are very tiny and small and very nice. Kind of a cable that we've seen before. This one is the microphone version, so you do get some controls there. And this one, of course, has the Moondrop spring tips, which the LAN forgot to put in the box. I think that probably would have been the one accessory that people really wanted on the LAN that they didn't decide to include, but the spring tips. But they did decide to include them on the Jew. So let's kind of jump right into it, and we'll go through this one kind of quickly. So better than Quarks DSP. I think that's the only thing that people really want to know. And I haven't actually personally heard the Quarks DSP, but I will make an educated guess and say no. And let's kind of look at what's happening here. And I will say that one of my major problems with the Jew is actually right there, and where Quarks probably gets it right is that mid bass. I think you do need, on this upper mid forward style sound, you do need a little mid bass to lend a little warmth into the mids, to give you, a little backing to the vocals, to have a little depth there. And the way Jew kind of drops it and hits pretty hard right here without any boost at all here, it's just a very lean sound. And you do get some sub bass, and that part is kind of okay. It's like you get some bass back out here, not a whole lot here at all, and then you end up with quite lean vocals here, and then they kind of boost this level with a 5K bump right there, and that makes things a little more thinner. And you can kind of see that Jew just went for this really thin version of either Quarks DSP, or the Chew is a very similar signature as well. And then, for good measure, they threw a really big kind of bump out there at almost 15K for sort of kind of an unnatural hit of air, right? And I think that's where they were a little overcompensating for where Quarks. I think that was some feedback that people wanted a little more out there on Quarks, but maybe a little heavy-handed on how much they put out there. So you end up with not as much mid bass. That's a little leaner, a little forward, bright, lean, even leaner, thinner, and then this little bump out there for good measure. So yeah, I don't think this one has a signature that was going to beat Quarks DSP. Did it actually beat LAN? I think the answer to that is it's probably in the same realm, as far as a realm of upper mid forward sets. I think, again, they really got this part wrong on Jew and really dropped out to the floor, where they really needed a little warmth to go through and make the vocals sound a little more organic, maybe a little more analog, more like a human voice. And then again, this 5K, that's just not so good on a lean signature. And then again, this extra hit out there, 15K, is just a little bit too much for such a lean signature. So no, LAN has a much better driver and a better signature. And if they had wanted to do a DSP version of some set, they probably should have looked at doing LAN. That probably would have been a good idea. So the good on this one, again, I think they did execute this plug-and-play USB-C for people who are not into dongles and just want to plug something into your phone. I do think they got the USB-C part right. Tiny, comfortable shells. The spring tips was a good include. I think all those things are all good. The sound, again, is this sort of niche tuning where you get quite a bit of sub bass, not a whole lot at all of the mid bass, and it's a very lean kind of vocal. But at the same time, that really does make the vocals pop out because they're so lean and there's not really any mid bass there behind it. You just get a real pop of vocals, and they sound kind of sharp and bright, but it's very separated because there's nothing a whole lot around it. the emphasis on the vocals might be better on movies and podcasts than music. And again, I think it almost fits with the USB-C if you're just looking for an IEM that you want to plug into your phone and do some casual listening to music and do movies and podcasts and all those other things. I think the emphasis on the vocals and how clean they are, I think that actually does really kind of work well with this USB-C DSP style. And again, kind of a decent value at $25 with the tips and no dongle required. So if you're just getting started, again, everything in the box is actually a pretty good box. Stage, this one, again, it kind of has width, but it really needs height to compete with everything else. And they put a ton of air out there, but it just doesn't get really beyond the upper mid bump on, as you see on most of these sets. That upper mid domination, not as much air to really take it higher, right? The stage just doesn't really have any height to it, and it's kind of hard to argue with what they were going for versus, if you were an audiophile and have lots of DAC and amps and dongles, this isn't really a set that's going to replace anything that you really have, so it's sort of not all that fair to compare it to on too many details with some other sets at the same price point. So at $25, not going to displace your other $25 sets like I was just talking about, and it's probably a downgrade if you like mid-bass. Again, I think they just fit this casual phone music listener style with the DSP version on this particular model. If you have been in the scene for a while and have lots of dongles, I think this one is probably not going to be for you. It does sound detailed and it does sound quite technical due to its sharpness, but it doesn't really sound organic or analog or have any warmth to it. It's a very kind of bright, sharp, and I think I would call them borderline strident, that it's right there on the edge of sibilant, how thin the vocals are, and especially depending on your volume, it will definitely get there. So between the tuning and the USB-C, it can definitely sound like a cheap, bright dongle, and in my opinion, I think this one does actually sound better than with smaller bore tips. And again, these spring tips are just big, wide bore tips. You can kind of almost see how wide they are, and that really works on very bassy sets, and this one, has some sub bass, but really by the time you're listening to your general tracks, this just emphasizes the upper mids and that sharpness and the leanness to the sound, and I'm not sure that was a great pairing on this particular set, but cool that I included them because they're expensive tips, but I'm not sure that they were the best match for the sound signature. So that is what I got on the Jew, so thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.